It's great to see everyone, to hear everyone. Welcome to Port City today. We're glad to be together on this day. Welcome to our Leland family. I've gotten to spend some time over there this summer, and it's just been really refreshing to be in so many different parts of the church. Just experiencing our congregation, being a part of our congregation in this way. Obviously, we're all wearing yellow shirts today, or some form of mustard yellow color shirts today. And this is really, and it's Stuff the Bus. This is 15 years that we've been doing Stuff the Bus as a church, which is pretty incredible. Yeah, that's really good. I mean, just lots and lots and lots of, of stuff that we have stuffed the bus with. But, part of this is what we're learning as a church, especially as a church that is, bigger than what some of you are familiar with. It's a way for us to be together, to demonstrate that we show up, even as a staff, as volunteers, we show up for each other. We get around things that we're doing, and we do them together. It's also a way for us to tangibly support places in our community that are dealing with the most vulnerable people in our community. We get to stand with community and schools and their mission, which is to support teachers and the schools. And we need our teachers, and we need our schools doing great work. We value the students. So this is a way for us to just a real accessible and tangible way to do that. One of the other things that we're doing as a church, there's several things, just so you'll know, we try to open our doors to as many things as we can. And I've had the privilege of serving on the board, serve on the board of the Community Justice Center, which is an initiative of our county through the DA's office that really works in violence. It's specifically targeted with some justice solutions in violence, particularly in the more marginalized communities. And part of their initiative is to they will be hosting a Youth Resilience Summit, which deals with just a lot of the trauma, generational trauma that has happened in their students. And we're going to be hosting that here on Thursday, August 22nd, just opening our doors. There'll be lots of different speakers here doing that. You can get information. You can email me and I'll give it to you. I guess that's probably the easiest way to do it. It'll be somewhere on our website, or I'll post it on social media. But we do this because these are ways for us as a church to constantly be extending ourselves into the community for the world. That's part of what we see as our vision. Life with God together for the world. We work for things. And I think in the sort of the polarized condition of our world, everybody wants to know what you're against, and what we've just decided is we're going to just spend everything we have being for the things that God cares about and bringing that to bear in the world. And so that's what we're going to be doing. Now, this summer, I have enjoyed immensely. Summer is far and away my favorite season. Fall's cool, but summer is awesome. And we've been working, and I've been doing this alongside of you, trying to work to reorient myself to what matters most. I'm so grateful. Clay and Carson and Brett and Laura Lynn, weren't they incredible? Like every week, so good, yeah, so good. They talked about our time, our identity, our calling, our desires. And I can't overstate how refreshing it is for me to be able to participate in the life of our church. And part of this strategy this summer, because we were doing a reset, this was a big summer in the Ashcraft household. We've been preparing for this summer for quite a long time. In June, my youngest daughter, Michaela, got married to her husband, Cayman. And so we got to celebrate a wedding. This is our family, Michaela and Cayman, and then there's the two. And then there's another one I think about. There they are right there. Michaela's excited, as you can tell. And it was just so special. This is my youngest daughter, so doing this was a little different. And just really, it makes me tear up just thinking about it. And then the next month in July, we welcomed our second granddaughter into the world. This is Carson and Maddie and Porter Wren, along with Lennon. And I think we got some more here. There we are, hanging out, enjoying some snuggles. And there's the two of them. So Lennon. So it's been nostalgic and tear jerking, and I've cried more this summer than in a long time. And as Julie and I were just thinking about what this summer's been like, we were sitting just talking, and our houses, they call it empty nesters, but that's actually not true. They're at our house all the time. But we had a couple nights where there was no one there. It was just Julie and I. We were talking, and we were trying to describe how it feels. We were obviously cherishing all the things that have happened. When Julie said, "It feels like we've been hit by a truck." I was like, that's exactly how it feels. And when we were talking about this, Julie said, "I feel like I've been holding my breath all summer, and now we just need a giant exhale." I think that's not just an emotion. That's what we sense and feel and embody. And some of you, perhaps, you feel that. And it might not be because it's been really good things in your life. It may be because it's really hard things in your life. And what you feel like you need is just a giant exhale. You just need to kind of let things go. And that's what a summer reset is for. What does this actually look like? It requires real time. This doesn't happen in a hurry, and it doesn't happen on the go. But part of what you do in this is you get to honor what has happened. You get to give weight to the things that have occurred in your life, the experiences that you've had, the things that you have felt. And when you mark an end of something, when you say this thing is now over, we're going to mark the end of summer. When you say this is now over, you're actually able to give weight to it. And it keeps you from just rushing in to what is next. It keeps you from just rushing on to the next thing. Marking the end of something keeps us from just this perpetual cycle of continuation. We get to acknowledge the full range of what we've experienced and what we've felt. And whether you've experienced breathtaking beauty or whether you've experienced suffocating uncertainty, either way, you got to catch your breath. And that's what we're trying to carve out some space and some time and some vision for today. There's a time for things to begin, and there's a time for things to end. And seasons can't become seasons unless they have an ending. And we don't do this very well, if at all. And so that's what I want for us to try and do this summer. I'm going to do it in two ways: to end well, to end this season well in order for us to move into the fall. I'm going to ask you to do two things. Number one is I'm going to ask you to sort of do a reset debrief. I want you to consider what your summer was like. You're not going to do it today. Well, you might be able to, but just not in the time here together. And number two is I want you to consider restarting some rhythms that you desperately need. Those two things, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. I don't know how many of you guys are like Netflix junkies. Any Netflix people here? You watch Netflix a lot? Okay, like three of y'all. We're not admitting this. Brett talked about the amount of time we spend watching TV. We're not raising our hand for any of this. Hulu people. I know you've been watching the Olympics, right? We've been watching this. So here's when and this is the only time of the year there's nothing. I love the Olympics because I don't even watch the news. This has been awesome. This is awesome. The whole world gets along. I didn't know this was possible. But I remember like with Netflix, when you're watching shows, when we were growing up, and I just sounds like an old man, right? When we were young, but you had to like wait a whole week for the next episode. And it's just like, you're like, I mean, and you were excited. You couldn't wait till Wednesday night, at 7 o'clock, because you get to see what happened. And now with the show, I remember the first time I saw this, like you finish one show, dude, that was really good. And there's a little window at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. And what does it do? It starts counting down. And it says, your next episode begins in 3, 2, 1. And it's like, oh, it's there. And you can watch 10 episodes and not move. Did you know this? There's actually a term for this. You know what it's called, right? It's binge watching. That's what we do. And it's so funny because now I think people have found ways, you don't even wait for the 10-second timer, man. You're just like, 10 seconds is too long. Got to start the show. And this is a lot of times how our lives are. It just goes from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. You started off with one, and it doesn't even become a season. It's just like one long string of to be continued, of continuation. We've lost the rhythms of Sabbath, of sunrise and sunsets. We've lost the rhythms of our week and the rhythms of our seasons. We've replaced with phrases like burn the midnight oil or the early bird gets the worm. And this sort of dragging things out to get as much done as we possibly can, to run as hard and as fast as we possibly can. And what we've done is we've planted, this has become fertile soils for this perpetual anxiety that just continues to grow. The pace just keeps accelerating. There's just nothing in our world that is likely to help you grab a hold of your pace. There's no built-in brakes. There's no margin to process. And this is how your past gets just dragged into the future. It never gets to be your past. It just becomes what you're living from. And it doesn't ever find a place of usefulness, a sense of completion in the life that you actually want to live. And this style of life, these continuations happen where there is no conclusions. And there are a lot of clearly defined conclusions. We know this, right? Like New Year's Eve is like a hard stop. It's 24 and now it's 25, right? We know that. High school graduations or college graduations, there are moments you were and now you're not. Marriage, it's a end of one season, it's the beginning of their hard finishes. But there are others that are a lot more vague. They're hard to notice. Like, when did the mullet actually stop being a thing? It's hard to tell because it's like, I think they're back. Sometimes it's hard to tell when, around here especially, when spring becomes summer, because it just felt like summer all along. We don't know what happened to winter or what happened to spring. It's just like winter to spring, or winter to summer. What happens? The journey to healing, to wholeness, the journey of grief, the journey of disappointment. When do these things have an ending? When do they start to become a part of the redemptive story rather than the thing that keeps us fearful of the future? I actually wrote a whole book on this. And I love this idea of a conclusion because it means two things. Conclusion means, number one, to bring something to an end. And you get a say in this. You can say, this is now over. Now, that's what we're going to try to do today. We're going to say, summer is over. We're going to draw a line. We're going to pick a point and draw a line. We're going to bring it to an end. Sometimes you have to bring these ending points in the middle of long seasons because you just can't run that long. It's like stages in the Tour de France, right? 2,000 miles, but it's a bunch of stages lined up. So you stop and you have to pick a point, draw a line, and then begin again. So you may have to do that, but you've got to have these places to create some kind of rhythm in our lives. But the second thing a conclusion means is to arrive at a judgment. It means that you get to stop and look and say, what is this? What happened? What did I think or feel or experience in this? You get to do this. This is what I'm talking about, what I mean by this. The conclusions create these intentional rhythms that allow us to see, they gain some perspective onto what is happening, but it requires us to pay attention. There's an enormous amount of substance between a finish and a start if we'll just look. And so I think that's the point of what was given to us in the beginning, is this notion of a Sabbath. As if you have your Bibles, I'm going to be back where we were when Clay and I got to talk about our summer Sabbath in Isaiah chapter 58. It's a chapter I cannot get away from. It is dense and it's got powerful promises in there. And it gives us vision of how God wants us to be in the world. And I don't have enough time today to go through the whole thing, so I'm just going to look at 2 verses in this. But the more I look at this, and I'm not like, I've avoided the Sabbath most of my life. I think I shared this with Clay. Clay does Sabbath, and he does it really well. And I'm like, it just feels too legalistic for me. But the more I look and the more I try to understand, the more I recognize one is it has been a part of my life for a long time. And it is everywhere in the Bible. It's everywhere. And I don't have, again, suffice to say, it's established in the very creation story in Genesis. It's one of the top 10 commandments that God gives to Moses. You see the indictment throughout the prophets and the kings and all the old covenant of when people failed to keep the Sabbath or they turned it into something that it wasn't intended to be. This was Jesus' war with the Pharisees And what prompted him to say, the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath, right? It prompted that. And it's designed for us. It's designed for you and for me to actually feel alive. It's designed for that exhale that you need to gain some perspective and to see some things. And what they are is they're these deep breaths of enjoyment that come from the sufficiency of God's grace. I want to say it one more time because that's what the Sabbath, that's what you're looking for. It's a sufficiency that comes from God's grace. It's to stop and to say that God is sufficient and competent to do what needs to be done in my life and to use me in those ways. Isaiah chapter 58. And this comes after a long list of basically saying, you have used the Sabbath for all the wrong things. Do you think this really honors me? And then he goes and says, this is what I'm looking for. And then here's how he sums this chapter up. Isaiah chapter 58, starting at verse 13. If you keep your feet from breaking the Sabbath and from doing as you please on my holy day. So here's kind of thing one. If you call the Sabbath a delight and the Lord's day honorable, right? This is kind of thing two. And if you honor it by not going your own way and not doing as you please or speaking idle words, this is kind of thing three. And it's interesting because the very beginning of this is if you keep your what? Your feet. What does he mean? Does he mean like your literal feet? It's talking about the embodiment of your life. If the way you move and the activity of your life, right? If you comply in this area, that's what he's saying. If you comply with the Sabbath, if you sort of position yourself with your body, with your activity, and if you keep from doing as you please on my holy day, if you call the Sabbath a delight, and this is just posture. This isn't it's like when you come home and your kid keeps the curfew. I'm home by 10, right? You don't just say it's a delight. The Sabbath is a delight. You've got to posture yourself to feel this and to sense this and to say, it is my joy to be home at curfew, right? It's a character formation thing. Something has to happen in you. And then he says, if you call or if you establish the Lord's day as honorable. And this is the idea that you're giving it weight. And there's two things that he says not to do, really three, but it's kind of two. You give the Lord's day weight by not doing what? Number one is, you can say it out loud, not going your own way. And number two, not doing as you please. So those are kind of the same thing. And what this doesn't mean that because you're working to want to do this. You're not working to want to do this and then go, well, you can't really do it because you want it, because it's what you please. That's not what he's saying. It's orienting our will. He's orienting kind of what we want. And I think of this as a posture of, say, submission. And this is a great word. It's a posture of submission for us to position ourselves before the Lord and to recognize that sometimes, maybe not for you, but for other people, sometimes my will is not automatically God's will. Do you know anybody like that? And what this is about is to reorient us. I remember I was at a conference. It was a very small conference. There was like 8 of us. And that's a long story, but it's very funny. I was an author that I really admired. I wanted to meet him. And some in our church knew him well, and he was going to be here and said, would you like to meet him? I said, of course I would. We'll spend 3 days together. I said, this will be awesome. We get to ask him all the questions about his books. And I paid the money to go, and right before we were about to go, he calls me up and says, hey, Mike, do you have any golf clubs? I was like, what do you mean? He said, well, I forgot to tell you, this is a golf retreat, which I do not like golf at all. And so that's how about it. I played golf for 3 days, which was terrible. But I got to hang out with Andrew Farley. We were talking, and I remember he said this. He said, one of the most surprising things is that you can actually want what God wants. It may not sound as like earth-shattering to you as it did to me, but I was always fighting. I was always fighting to get myself, right? Like, God, I know it's got to hurt, it's got to be hard, and somehow to realize that my heart can be formed in such a way, that my character can be formed in such a way that actually to do what God wants is a delight, but it comes after a lot of clashing. And you got to be willing to recognize that, God, I want this, even though I'm pretty sure this is not what you want, and to do the work to get there. Make sense? It's submission. And the last thing he says is this right here. Or, I love this, or speak idle words. And we talked about this with Clay, just to stop speaking. But I think this is really important because words are the way in which we first create realities. And this is the way in which we articulate and the way we define things. And there needs to be a lot more of that, in my humble opinion. I hear a lot of people talk about this all the time. They'll say things like, what do you mean by that? You know what I mean. I'm like, no, I don't know what you mean. I wouldn't have asked if I did, right? To articulate. God has given us minds. We're going to talk more about this in a few weeks. He's given us a mind to awaken things, to articulate, to name things, to call things. It's a gift. And we lose it because we use words to manipulate or to manufacture or to portray something that we want someone to believe without it actually being true. And this is the industry of most of what we see in the media, right? It's all designed to give an illusion of something that they want you to know or believe or feel. And we've been entrusted with words, with the capacity to say things and cause things and create realities with the words that we say. And what he's saying is the Sabbath is a chance to stop speaking idle words, to actually cause your words to matter and to make things that are consistent with God. And I think about this, and the way I thought of this in my mind is like, this is the idea of stewardship. It's the idea of the power of the tongue holds life and death. And it's that we have to reorient ourselves and not use our words to justify or excuse, but rather to do things that are more consistent. There's a purpose of creating and restoring and those kinds of things. And so that's how I think of this. And the Sabbath rest is where I consider what is it that I will bring to bear on the world around me. And then I think this is really interesting. If this becomes the posture of Sabbath, what happens? What's the result? You'll find your joy in the Lord. And then God says, I will cause you to ride in triumph on the heights of the land, and you will feast on the inheritance of your father Jacob. That's poetic, you get that, right? So what does it mean? This is why you can't read the Bible in a hurry. And this is why you should read a poem here or there, or you should write out the lyrics to a song and look at them, because you can't do this in a hurry. You have to stop and think about it. Because he's saying things, you'll ride on the heights of the land. Like, okay, yeah, cool, we'll all do that. I was like, we don't know what that means. And he's asking you to engage your imagination, to consider something. And these are rich biblical images. This is from Moses' song in Deuteronomy chapter 32. If you go read the whole thing this morning, just to go through it. And there's this phrase in there after it says that God has miraculously delivered them through the wilderness, and he's fed them and all this. And he says that and this is the description, is that they were riding in triumph on the heights of the land. It's also interesting that as these heights of the land, or these high places, were all the places where Israel would build temples and altars and idols, and that would be to destroy. They would basically, the place where God has intended us to dwell, in the realm where he rules, we have replaced them with our will and our way. And so what this is an invitation. When we learn how to do this, we're reorienting ourselves to the way that God intends us to be in this world. Not that you check the box and say, I did the Sabbath, I called it the delight, check, check. I did things I hated, check. It's to say that you re-enter into the way in which you're created and made, that somehow your relationship with Christ makes your heart come alive and you get to be that way in the world. That's the picture. That's what the feast and the riding on the heights of the land imply and mean. So, what do we do? There's two things I said at the beginning that I want you to do. And so there are two things that I want to invite you to do. You know me, so I would get a pen and a piece of paper out and I would do this. For those of you who don't do that yet, I've got a plan. So I want you to do a reset debrief, to take and look at this summer. Even if you haven't, you say, oh, this is my first week back, or I haven't really done this summer, or whatever, it doesn't matter. I want you to but you've got a camera roll on your phone. You can go back and look at the pictures you took, almost like you do your personal retreat, right? To take some time and do a summer reset debrief. And to just ask yourself, what have I experienced this summer? What have I experienced? What were your emotions? How is your energy? Laura Lynn alluded to that. How's your energy? What about your capacity for relationships? Are you people tired? That's what I call it. People tired. You got to prepare to be with people. But if you don't think about this, if you don't stop, guess what's going to happen? You're going to rush on into what's next. School's about to start. Traffic's about to be better or worse, I guess, who knows? I mean, we had a wedding. And you have to stop and feel that. Most things don't slow down because I had something happen in my life, and most things don't slow down because you had something happen in your life. And if you don't stop and grab them, you might not get to give it the weight it deserves. To find things, to articulate things. What did I love about my daughter's wedding? Oh, your daughter got married, it's so beautiful. Yeah, the flowers were awesome. All that's true. Was there anything else that I noticed or saw or felt or believe? And the answer is yes, there are. There are lots of those things. And those things underneath become the source of prayers for Cayman and Michaela in their marriage. Is there anything more than just oh, this little baby Puerto Rican is so cute, right? Of course she is. Is there anything under that I feel? Do I think about God's purpose in my life? And what's, how do you, these are all the things that you name. And you begin to pray and ask God. It helps you to look and see and notice things differently than just, oh my gosh, she's so cute. And you don't find these things because you're on to the next. You find them because you stop and you reset. So how was your summer? Were there things that happened that you need to cherish? Were there things that happened that you need to grieve? Were there things that happened that were kind of like these spark moments? So, hey, there might be something there, and you need to give it some more thought or attention or try to understand it with a little bit more nuance, or maybe invite a friend into that conversation with you. That's what I'm talking about doing. Is the activity of my life, what have I done? How have you experienced the activity of your life, the things that you've done this summer? What about the pace of your life, the speed at which you've done them? I remember trying to race my kids to bath and bedtime. You know why? Not because it was fun, because I was tired. And the quicker they went to bed, the sooner I could do it. I went, isn't that terrible? But it happens. It's the speed at which we do some of the things that we do. You just need no judgment. Well, there is. It's a conclusion. You need to be able to say, yes, this is how I want my life to be, or no, I don't. And the second thing is to perhaps restart a rhythm. Restart a rhythm. And I would just start with the questions, where are you now? Do you feel like you're coming out of summer with a sense of hope and energy and excitement about the fall? Like vision for the fall, not just like, oh, thank goodness our kids are going back to school. Like vision for the fall. Like this is going to be a great season because. What's the rhythm? Like what's the rhythm that you're likely to have? What might be different in your life? What would you like to be different in your life? Maybe a better way to phrase that. And then maybe a better way to spend some time is just what needs to be different. I'm going to suggest, at the risk of sounding self-serving, a way to restart a rhythm for the fall. And that is maybe using Sunday as a Sabbath. Using this space that we share together as a Sabbath, as a way for us to reorient ourselves, to submit ourselves and to recognize that we've been given a significant call and stewardship in the world in which we live. That if this space, this time that we share together, this is what we're really working hard from our end, is to do this together, to really make this a thing. But what if this space became a weekly reset for you? For some of you, it probably is. A way to reorient, that it wasn't just something that you attended, but rather it was a place where you experience something of what God longs to do in the world. And out of that experience, right, you would return to bring something of heaven into the places of our world in which you work and live, or maybe into your own world. Maybe you could just receive something of God's longing into your own world as a result. And so maybe what you do as a part of your rhythm is just decide we're going to show up on Sundays. And again, if you think it's for a high attendance, you don't know me very well. I don't frankly care. But what I do care about is creating the kind of place that allows us to become the kind of church that I believe I need. I believe that you need it. And I'm pretty sure the world around us needs it. That's what I want for us to do. Pretty simple step. But what would it be like if at the end of fall, you look back and said, that rhythm helped me see things that I had not considered before. Those are the kind of things we notice if we start them today. Summer reset debrief, and restart some rhythms for the fall. Father, that as we gather as a Sabbath, we want to reorient ourselves. I ask you to meet us. Some are here. They've had tremendous joy. The summer that needs to be celebrated and honored and cherished. Some have experienced deep pain and uncertainty that needs to be grieved, acknowledged, held out for others and for you to help. Father, that as we do this together, we get to experience both joy and pain and beauty and ashes all in the same space together, because we hope for something redemptive in all of it. So Father, I ask that you would just cause that to happen in us. And I pray, Father, that you would continue to give us vision and experience what that is actually like. And I ask all of these things. I believe this is what you long for in your church. And I ask all these things in your son, Jesus, who is our King. Amen.